Welcome to the School of Wisdom, a weekly podcast produced for the Bible Bistro, studying the book of Proverbs chapter by chapter. My son, hear the instruction of your father. Forsake not the law of your mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace to your head, and chains about your neck. Now, this week's lesson. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to the School of Wisdom podcast. Today, Proverbs chapter 24, here in the Bible Bistro. Here in the Bible Bistro, we have all kinds of good stuff. Our flagship program, Daily Dose Radio, happens every day, 5 days a week, studying the Psalms verse by verse. And then we have the Creek Road Baptist Pulpit, which is once a week uploaded to YouTube, Spreaker, of course, and all the other fun sites that we're on. I hope you'll go there and check that out as well. Today, Proverbs chapter 24 here in the School of Wisdom. And this Proverbs chapter 24, is divided very nicely. We have the wisdom lessons that begin the chapter, and then we have two my son statements. And the my son statements divide the chapter the rest of the way. There are two of them. So this is divided into thirds. Wisdom lessons that begin us here, 1 through 12, and then my son number 1 is in verse 13, and then my son number 2 is in verse 21. So from there we go to the end of the chapter. And lovely division and so much rich material here. One thing that you'll find as you look through the outline, and by the way, if you want the outline, just go to my-dailydose.com and look in the blog. Check out the entries there that say outline 4, and then just pick the chapter that you're looking for. Today you'd look for Proverbs chapter 24, and there in chapter 24 you'll find this outline. Just download it as a PDF. You can have it on your machine. You can have it on your device, whatever you're using to listen to this podcast, and you can also download it in paper form so that you can keep it and write on it, whatever you want to do. Those are all free, by the way, just for you. So you're looking at the outline, and you'll notice that the Lord's name only shows up twice in this chapter. Once in verse 18, once in verse 21. So only in the My Son sections do we have the Lord's name. Wisdom shows up quite a bit, especially in that first section. We have, of course, those are wisdom lessons there in that first section. It shows up twice in the first My Son statement, and once in the second My Son statement. So we'll look at those as we go through the chapter. Reading now, I'm going to read down through verse 9. Be not thou envious against evil men, neither desire to be with them, for their heart studieth destruction, and their lips talk of mischief. Through wisdom is an house builded, and by understanding it is established. By knowledge shall all the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. A wise man is strong, yea, a man of understanding increases strength. For by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, and a multitude of counselors there is safety. Wisdom is too high for a fool. He openeth not his mouth in the gate. He that deviseth to do evil shall be called a mischievous person. The thought of foolishness is sin, and the scorner is an abomination to men. Just through verse 9 there, and you'll notice that if you're looking at the outline, we have 4 wisdom lessons outlined here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So verse 1 and 2 is the first wisdom lesson. Don't be envious against evil men, neither desire to be with them. This, ladies and gentlemen, is so very pertinent for our day, because we see people who are popular and we want to be with them. Of course, it's pertinent for every day, because popularity and wealth always attract folks. Whether they're evil or not, we don't care. We just want to be around their popularity. And a lot of times, folks that have a great deal of popularity have very little morals. So they have a lot of popularity but no morality. Here we see that the psalmist tells us, don't be envious. Don't want to be with them. Don't desire to be with them. Why? Because something's going to rub off from the evil man. Their heart studies destruction, and their lips talk of mischief. So if you're around them, if wanting to be with you places you in their company, that's not a good thing. So don't be envious of evil men. Don't be envious at all. Envy is a horrible thing. James tells us very clearly what envy brings. And if you want to look that up, I'll challenge you to go to James chapter, I think it's in chapter 2. Then we have the second wisdom lesson in verses 3 and 4. Through wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established. Wisdom has a direct application to just the regular process of living. A house is builded through wisdom. Now, he's not just talking about brick, mortar, stone, wood, all the rest. Everything that goes into creating a physical house. But he's talking about your house. You are, say if you're a man, you have a family, that's your house. And everything that is concerned with that house, all of your real and liquid assets, your family, your children, your wife, all that you own, all that you have, and especially your reputation, that's your house. And so wisdom builds that. It's not built any other way, and foolishness will destroy that. And notice, we're not talking, there's no contrast here between the man who builds his house wisely and the one who builds foolishly. It just says, a house is builded by wisdom, understanding establishes it, knowledge fills all the chambers with precious and pleasant riches. And of course, these things, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, where do they come from? What are they? Well, if you remember, go all the way back to chapter 1, we've got our 10 conditions of Proverbs. These are those 3 of those 10 conditions right here in this 24th chapter. We're still following those ideas all the way through. Third wisdom lesson is in verses 5 and 6. A wise man is strong, yea, a man of understanding increases strength. For by wise counsel thou shalt make war, and in multitude of counselors there is safety. This is one of those proverbs that is probably very popular, very familiar, and that is what is said here in verse 6. In a multitude of counselors there is safety. And yeah, that's very true, because when you surround yourself with wisdom and wise people, you're going to have good advice, and good advice leads to prosperity, it leads to safety, it leads to victory, and so forth. That's why it's so important when you look at what a president or a premier does with their cabinet and their close advisors. You need to pay close attention to who those people are, because they're influencing the leadership. So wise counsel is always good to have in close quarters, especially in the government. But it's also true for just a regular man who's building his house on wisdom. You don't know everything, and so you need wise counselors. You need wise counselors not maybe to make war against an enemy with swords and spears, but maybe you need to make war against the moles in your backyard, or the termites that are eating your dwelling, or something. And you don't know all that there is to know about those things, so you need wise counsel. Who have you surrounded yourself with that you can go to and ask about those things? The fourth of these wisdom lessons is in 7 through 9. Wisdom is too high for a fool. So we're talking about the fool here, but notice we have that statement. Starts this off. It's just a fact statement. Wisdom is too high for a fool. Okay. Now you notice that the fool then, we see him in the rest of these verses. He is the mischievous man. He has thoughts of foolishness because he's a fool, and he's a scorner. It's too high for a fool. All of this is going to be too much for him. He has to dwell down here where there's scorning and mischievousness. He's devising evil. He's not thinking about wisdom. He's not dwelling upon wisdom. He's not surrounded himself with wisdom. That's too high for him. All he can reach for is the low-hanging fruit, which is thinking about and devising evil, being mischievous, thinking about foolishness. And notice that 9th verse, the thought of foolishness. It doesn't say the act of foolishness, it's the thought of foolishness. And thinking about foolishness, that strikes at the heart, doesn't it? Yeah, it's just exactly what Jesus Christ did in the Sermon on the Mount when he described the commandments. He said, it's not enough to say, don't commit adultery. What you need to worry about is seeing a woman and thinking about adultery with her. That's adultery. So we go from the action to the motivation. What's in the heart? So if it's in the heart, that's what needs to be excised. That's what needs to be cut out. The thought of foolishness. It's not the foolish act. It's just the thought of it. Even that is sin. See how the Scripture always dives down to the heart and the motivation. And then verses 10 through 12, we have the last of these wisdom lessons, and this is all about standing for life. If you faint, if you forbear, if you say. And then notice, this is about those being drawn unto death, ready to be slain. Be careful that you don't turn a blind eye to those who are in despair, who need help, because the Lord knows. He ponders the heart. He keeps the soul. He knows it. He shall render to every man according to his work. Of course, all of those statements there in 12 end in a question. Doesn't God know? Yes, He does. These are rhetorical questions, you see. So the answer is obvious. Yes, the Lord does know. He does ponder the heart. He does keep the soul. He knows it. He'll render to every man according to his works. So be assured that what you do will be your reward. So stand for life. Verse 13, we have the first of the my son statements. My son, eat thou honey because it is good, and the honeycomb which is sweet to thy taste. So shall the knowledge of wisdom be unto thy soul when thou hast found it. Then there shall be a reward, and thy expectation shall not be cut off. You'll notice that I've underlined and set off a little bit with a tab, when thou hast found it. This is always the condition of the father teaching the son, or the teacher teaching the student here in the school of wisdom. Application. You must go get it. Wisdom's just not going to show up one day and say, hey, let's go for a walk. No, you have to go looking. So you seek out wisdom. You apply your heart to understanding. You obey the Father's commands. You have the fear of the Lord in your heart so that you are ready to walk after these things. This knowledge of wisdom will be unto your soul like honey, and like the honeycomb, it's sweet. You know exactly what you're going to get when you get it. I don't have to tell my 3-year-old granddaughter how sweet and delicious a donut is. She already knows. And so she knows when she eats that donut what she's going to get from that donut. Same thing here. When you go after the knowledge of wisdom, you know exactly what you're going to get. It's sweet as the honey and the honeycomb. When you find it, and that's important, you have to go looking, you have to seek it, you have to apply yourself. Always the proverbist is telling us to go and find and apply and hear and listen and do. There shall be a reward. Your expectation shall not be cut off. My granddaughter's expectation is never cut off when she eats a donut. She knows what she's going to get. And so you and me, when we look for the knowledge of wisdom, we're going to get exactly what the Lord promises. Then in this My Son section, we have a charge to the wicked. I think that this may be the only time so far in the book of Proverbs that we've had a direct address to the wicked man. Now, we've talked a lot about him. We've described him. He's been described over and over and in so many ways. We've looked at the wicked man from different perspectives. But here, I think, is the first time that we've had an address directly to him. Notice, lay not wait, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous. Spoil not his resting place. For a just man falleth 7 times, and riseth up again. But the wicked shall fall into mischief. So, is a charge to the wicked, don't do this. Don't go after the righteous man. Don't go after the just man. You know, because he might fall, and you might cause him to fall. But he's going to rise up again. But what's going to happen to you? Well, that you're going to fall. But notice the fall of the wicked man there in 16 is into mischief. It's not that he gets up from his fall. No, he falls down and he stays down. The righteous man gets up 7 times. Notice verse 17. Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth. Now here's still an address to the wicked man. I think it's also addressed to the my son. Let not thine heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. So if you have an enemy and you want him to quit and something happens to him, well, you just need to pray for him. You don't need to rejoice over the fact that he's injured or hurt or something else. You know, you need to be glad that the Lord has spared you, but pray for him or her. And then we have a charge concerning the evil man. Fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked. For there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. So this charge concerning the evil man, we had a charge to the wicked man up there in verse, 15? Now we come to the charge concerning the evil man. It's not to him, it's to us who are in the school of wisdom. Fret not yourself. Now, we've been already told, haven't we? Don't be envious against the evil man, neither desire to be with him. That was verse 1. Here we come to this, fret not yourself because of the evil man, neither thou be envious at the wicked. So this goes hand in hand with verse 1. For there shall be no reward to the evil man, the candle of the wicked shall be put out. When that word put out is used, that's God's judgment on the wicked. Unless the wicked repent and turn from his wicked ways, then he will not have light hereafter. Verse 21 begins the second My Son section. My son, fear the Lord and the king, and meddle not with them that are given to change. For their calamity shall rise suddenly, and who knoweth the ruin of them both? So the second My Son section begins here in verse 21, to fear the Lord. Now, again, this is one of our conditions in Proverbs. Over and over and over again, we've had this command, fear the Lord. It's not just one time in the first chapter. It's not just one time in the second chapter. It has been repeated constantly, continuously throughout the book of Proverbs. And here, the teacher telling the student, the father telling the son, fear the Lord and the king. Meddle not with them that are given to change. For calamity shall arise suddenly. Their calamity shall arise suddenly. And who knoweth the ruin of them both? That is, the ruin of them both. If you fear the king, if you fear the Lord, you fear the king, you don't have to worry about what they might do to you because you fear them. You respect them, you honor them, you love them, you serve them. But if you don't, well, then you've got a problem here because their calamity arises suddenly. Who knows what ruin they might bring to the life of the person that doesn't fear them. Verse 23, we have some more wisdom statements. 23 through 25. These things also belong to the wise. Now, you know, we just have sort of a potpourri here, and I've numbered them 1, 2, and 3. It's not good to have respect of persons in judgment. We kind of know that, don't we? We've seen that command before in the Proverbs, up to this point. Verse 24, he that saith to the wicked, thou art righteous, him shall the people curse, nations shall abhor him. So you don't call the wicked man righteous, and you don't call the righteous man wicked. But to them that rebuke him, rebuke who? Rebuke the righteous man. Shall be delight, and a good blessing shall come upon them. Every man shall kiss his lips that giveth a right answer. So it's important to be able to judge and discern righteousness from wickedness and know who's who. Then we come to 27 through 29, and I've just labeled this behavior at home. This is really more about the neighbor than anything else. But that first verse in 27 tells us about what we're to do with our home. Prepare thy work without, make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterwards build thine house. So you need to take care of your income first, and then build your house. Don't build your house and then go looking for income, because then it might be too late. Work first, then build. Verse 28 and 29 focus on the neighbor, and this takes us right back to Exodus chapter 20 and the 9th commandment. The 9th commandment teaches us that we're not to give or bear a false witness against our neighbor. Notice this, be not a witness against thy neighbor without cause. Deceive not with thy lips. Say not, I will do so to him as he has done to me. I will render to every man according to his work. Why don't we do that? How come that's a principle of living a life of faith? Because we've been told the Lord will take care of revenge. It's not our job, it's not our duty to take care of revenge. The Lord does that. So don't say, I'm going to do to him as he's done to me. That's not your job. Your job is to let the Lord handle it. You're not to render a man according to his work, because you can't see the heart. Only the Lord can. Verse 30 through 32 is a lesson about slothfulness. Again, we come back to this idea of right work. And here we have Verse 30, let me read these for you. I went by the field of the slothful, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. And lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof. And the stone wall thereof was broken down. Then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it, and received instruction. Yea, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man. So the slothful man doesn't take care of his stuff. He doesn't take care of his field. He doesn't take care of his vineyard. He doesn't do anything about it. It's all grown over. Nettles cover the face of it. The stone wall's broken down. Why? Because if you notice in verse 33, the slothful man's sleeping. He's taking his siesta. But not just siesta. He's taking naps all day long. He's too busy napping than to work. He can't work, so he must take his sleep. I considered this, and I looked upon it, and received instruction. If the slothful man's sleepy, then this is what's going to happen. So shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth. Why is that? If the poverty comes as one that travels, then, ladies and gentlemen, there's a problem with the broken down wall. There's a problem with the grown over vineyard, because you're not going to have any produce to sell. Well, that ends chapter 24. I hope you'll join me again next time as we look at chapter 25 and begin the third section, the final section in the book of Proverbs, on the School of Wisdom podcast. Hey, thanks for listening to the School of Wisdom podcast. If you're listening to this over YouTube, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so that you'll be notified every time one of these podcasts is uploaded. I really appreciate all my followers, and I try to respond to each and every one of your questions. Come again next week, and we'll enjoy another lesson in the School of Wisdom.